Hello, oh, there we go. Hi everyone, how we doing? Are we enjoying Space Week so far? Amazing. Well, we have a really special panel here for you today. Some folks here have been involved in the space sector for quite some time, especially here in New York. But I want to get a sense in the room of how long folks in this room have been involved in the space sector, specifically in New York. If you are brand new to the space, you've been here for like a year or two, raise your hands. Okay, we have some fresh ones. Let's see. 5 years. 5 years? Okay. 10 years? Oh, okay, we have some veterans, yes, amazing. Well, we have a really great mixed range of experience here on this panel, and I think everyone will be able to speak quite well to how the space economy in New York has been developing over the last few years, and how we can all come together to better take advantage of the unique impacts and advantages that New York has to offer. So I'll just kick things off real quick. I have been in New York working in the space sector for almost 10 years, and the Intrepid Museum was actually the first event, or the first place I got to experience a space event at years ago. It was for a New Space New York event up in the Space Shuttle room. And when I came to that event, I was so enchanted by the very active, enthusiastic community that I encountered. And it stayed that way for a few years up until the pandemic. The founders of those organizations that kind of were serving as the major gathering points for the city space community, they left the city, and there was a gap that Empire Space has been working tirelessly to fill, and they've done such a wonderful job at it. And there's been almost like a renaissance happening in the space community, and it's been really exciting to see how folks are looking at the unique offerings in New York City, the art, the media, the business community, and figuring out how can we use every unique offering that New York City has to build a stronger, vibrant space community here in the city. And we have some individuals who can speak so very well to that. So let's start with you, Chandler. We're gonna go down the line and hear a little bit about what everyone's working on. And I'd love if everyone could share what has New York specifically, how has living in this city impacted an aspect of your career trajectory?
Awesome. Hi everyone, I'm Chandler. I'm the founder and chief galactic officer of Imagine Milk. Imagine Milk is a marketing agency for the space industry. We've been around for about 3 years now. And we originally started out in Colorado. There are a ton of private space startups. I personally come from a film production background, worked in Hollywood for a bit, but eventually ended up in Colorado and produced content for a lot of the private space startups out in Colorado. And then moved out to New York about a year ago. And New York was a huge draw for us because we also work with a lot of VCs out here and their portfolio companies. We're a marketing agency, and New York is the marketing capital of the world. And then on top of that, we work closely with a lot of artists and designers and creatives, and New York is such a creative city that it made a ton of sense. And it's super cool that like Kim was saying, that the industry out here is growing and the community is still small, but getting to know people here and building those relationships early on has been super valuable for us. That's it. That's about it for me.
Let's see if this works. Oh yeah, it works. Awesome.
Yeah, let's just give a little bit of background on how New York has shaped your journey. You can maybe start with your old role, and then later on we can get into what you're now working on.
Yeah, okay. Well, not working now. There we go. There we go. Let's pass the mic. Yeah, so I kind of got into space in a very roundabout way. But it actually started here in New York, where I was in grad school at Columbia School of Architecture and in the Historic Preservation program. And I had a professor who, long story, but I'm going to make it short here, great New York story where he was working in Cambodia at Angkor Wat. That was one of his big projects. And he was reading in the newspaper, the New York Times, he's on the subway, reading in the Times about how the space shuttle is flying over Angkor, and it has this new technology on it. It's called XR at the time. They could see through clouds and get images of the Earth from space. And He got off the subway, he was on his way to Columbia, got off the subway, calls his office and says, get me Diane Evans at JPL. And he said, I'll wait. And he's there for like an hour waiting for them. They couldn't get her. Finally they get her. He says, look, you're gonna be flying over Angkor. I want you to take some images of Angkor Wat. And this became they took it. I mean, just like Ethan, when he's talking about how you're talking to astronauts and they're willing to help you. She was project manager at NASA JPL, and she said, fine, yeah, we'll do it. And it became very iconic images of an archaeological site from space. So he's telling this story in class. I'm like, sign me up, man. Like, get me going. So I did that, and then moved to California, and there were no, Southern California, not a whole lot of historic preservation jobs there. But I found a company that was building rockets and rocket planes. It was looking for a proposal writer, and I was a technical writer. So they hired me, and I've been in this industry now for 20 years. I was out in California for 10. The company I was working for started to go down, and my partner said, there's no reason for you to be here in Mojave, California. Come back with me to New York, because they were in New York. And I've been able to make it work. So doing remote work before remote work was even a thing. So yeah, and just like those guys here, I mean, it's the capital. It's the capital of the world in a sense, because you can go anywhere from New York. So that's about it.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm Liz Kennick, I'm president of Teachers in Space, and I too came to New York at the undergraduate school. I was a project manager and systems engineer at Black & Decker in Baltimore, and Morgan Stanley recruited me because they were looking ahead to year 2000, and then they had the EMU project. They sent me to London for that, but they needed somebody to start their global project office, which is what I did. Then I got involved in the Space Frontier Foundation, and they asked me to take over their Teachers in Space project, which I was really happy to run. We had a nice big NASA grant. We were doing workshops training teachers until 2013, when the federal government sequestration stripped NASA of all its educational money. So there was no more money for Teachers in Space. We spun off. We're a 501c3 incorporated. NASA grants built and established a 2U suborbital payload, which has flown repeatedly with Blue Origin. And then last year, Lauren Sanchez was the first person to take it on an astronaut flight. So after that, we got a couple more astronaut flights with Blue with that payload. Unfortunately, New Shepard isn't flying anymore. We were doing teams with teachers on Zero G. They're not flying anymore. So we got to get a New Glenn. We got to get VAST up to space. We need flights. But I'm doing a breakout after this, so if anybody's hanging around at 3:45, come down to the breakout room and we can tell you more.
Hello, I'm Ashley Zelinski, and I am an artist, which is kind of a weird thing to have at a space event such as this, but I've been working with the space industry for about 10 years now. I started out by doing the Artist in Residence program at SWNY, and then weaseled my way into NASA Ames, and then NASA Kennedy, and then eventually ended up seeing the James Webb Space Telescope when it was still on Earth and falling in love with it, and then just making that team my family for the next 10 years. So I'm still making art about the Webb Telescope, but I also am collaborating with astronaut Mike Massimino, who is also a New York local, and we're doing a show at Heft Gallery in the Lower East Side in November. I did a bunch of 3D scans of his astronaut equipment and milled it with CNC robots and marble in Tuscany. So it's going to be a lot of marble in that show. And then I've done a bunch of like virtual reality experiences, one of which was shown at the Whitney Museum in 2024. I'm going to do a bunch of like dome experiences this year, 360 production map dome experiences. But yeah, my New York story is I'm an artist, and this is the capital of the art world. So, of course, if you're going to find a space artist, I guess they'd be in New York. And actually, yeah, you can go see my artwork. It's downstairs in the rotunda. I'm showing a generative piece of artwork that's using Webb telescope spectroscopy data. And it's a generative piece of art, so it's an algorithm, so it's constantly generating new images. And yeah, it's never the same twice, so go check it out.
Hi everyone, my name is Gitika and I'm the founder of Ignited Thinkers, which is a nonprofit organization to spread space education to all students. I started it around 8 years ago when I was in 8th grade and it's been growing. We have a plethora of things we do, including a YouTube channel where we've interviewed over 175 diverse aerospace professionals in the industry, and not one story has been the same, which was the point of the YouTube channel, to show how you can enter this field through many ways. We also do local events at like Title I elementary schools and also like global space education summits, partnering with space agencies in different countries. And I'm also a student. I'm a graduating senior at Columbia University and I'm studying biomedical engineering and economics, and I'm planning to go to medical school. And so aerospace medicine is something I'm very excited by, and I'm still figuring out my journey, so I'm excited to kind of bring to you kind of the perspectives I've gathered over the past few years in the space sector. And my connection to New York is obviously coming here for school. Never thought I would be in New York City, but once I got here, there's just the number of people I've met in all these different backgrounds has enabled me to improve my outreach efforts. I think one thing that makes New York different, which was kind of touched upon in the last talk, is that there are so many people with different backgrounds, like artists, tech entrepreneurs, like educators, scientists, and New York has such an expansive medical healthcare system here. So you meet physicians who are doing aerospace medicine research, but you also get so many new perspectives. So you're not in like an echo chamber of people doing the same thing, and you get new ideas, new perspectives to integrate into your own work. Recently, I came across something where someone, like a startup company, moved out of Silicon Valley, came to New York City, and people were like, "Why would you do that?" And they were saying after being there for like 5-6 years, it was because with all these tech people, it's like the same 4 people, the same conversations, you're in like an echo chamber. But when you come to New York City and you're with all these different people, you get new perspectives, new ideas, and just new thoughts you wouldn't have thought about that can add value to your company. And so I think that was like a perspective that I bring into like kind of what I've been doing these past 4 years, and I would be a different person without New York.
Let's actually lean a bit more into that. So New York is known to be a city that has incredible institutions, incredible resources, but there seems to be something missing when it comes to developing an effective pipeline. Gitika, let's start with you. As someone who came to New York, having already spoken to so many industry leaders and then coming to a world-class institution like Columbia, what do you feel like is missing in this pipeline, is missing in what is a disconnect that maybe students or educators may have when it comes to connecting the dots on how to translate the education systems we have here to the real world impact people can have in the space sector?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of you, because you're all space people, you understand, but messaging and storytelling is really key here. I think there's a lot of stereotypes in the industry. Conferences where we bring space people together is very important, but also going into places where there aren't space people and we're putting on art events or big like expos and having like science fairs in places where maybe there aren't space people is just as important. We have thousands of people who come through Central Park every day, putting on a space event there so people can just access it for free. And changing this narrative around space and making it more accessible is important. Recently we saw with like the Artemis II launch, something that brought a lot of attention to it was like the Project Hail Mary, like the space movie coming out. And I think it's really important that we try to make space more mainstream and not just within our industry. And one of the ways to do that is through media and getting students to for it to come into their minds. One of the best ways I think to do this, that recently Frank White, he's the founder and person who coined the term the overview effect, he said something that stuck with me, which was we always think about Star Trek. A lot of people from this generation, past generations, whole Star Trek is what inspired them to think about space. But Star Trek is not necessarily relevant to our generation as much as it might have been 1 or 2 generations ago. And we need a new Star Trek now that can inspire students to be like, this is the vision that we're working towards, that people grow up watching. And I think working on that messaging is really key. And what companies can do right now, I think, is always having a space to Earth vertical in all of their mission statements, because every application to space has an application to Earth. So I think making that messaging really clear on your website, in talks you give to schools, to college students, incoming people that you hire, I think just changing that overall messaging can go a really long way in building that space culture. And I think we're working towards it, but just pushing it a little bit more.
Absolutely, and Chandler, that's something you've been very focused on. As someone who came from the broader media landscape and then dialed into space, what gaps did you see when you first entered the field, and how are you working to address that with your partners?
Great question. Yeah, we saw that so I don't have a technical background, right? I worked in Hollywood for a while, but I later in my career worked for Blue Halo and AV, aerospace, and there was a huge gap between what like the engineers were building on the ground versus what the C-suite was selling versus what the investors saw, and there's the whole kind of storytelling gap. That was something that kind of drew me in, and so the problem that we ended up solving was how do we, market deep tech in space in a way that's visually appealing and that's digestible to investors, to stakeholders, to other countries. And so we found that there's a lot of different avenues. There's not just like website videos. Right now we launched like a creator partnership where we represent different science communicators. But on top of that, I think there's also, hosting events like these, kind of building out the narrative in each city. But the key thing that I think that New York still lacks that a lot of the other cities have is just stuff to share that people can see. When I was in LA, you have JPL, in Texas, Florida, Alabama. There's so many different spots where people can go and actually see what's happening. Here, I think it's awesome that this event's being hosted at the Intrepid because you can actually see, what humans have built. But there's still so much that is currently being built that the general public just doesn't have access to. And so that's why, I founded Imagine Milk because, actually showcasing what is currently being built, what is available. People are naturally excited by this kind of stuff. And so, we've just built a business around it.
I love that. And I feel like collaboration is such a key part of what makes New York a resource-rich city. The fact that we have so many different industries that we can collaborate with. We don't have rocket building facilities per se in Midtown, but we have some incredible members of other industries. And Ashley, I feel like that's something you've absolutely leaned into, was leveraging collaborations to increase the visibility of the space sector and all it has to offer. How have you done that uniquely in New York through your artwork?
Like I said, New York is the capital of the art world, and it's just really great to be able to travel around. And I do visit all of the different NASA locations. I was at Kennedy for the Artist 2 launch a couple weeks ago, and before that I was at JPL, and I'm always at Goddard. So I'm kind of like going around and, collecting stories and inspiration and then bringing them back to New York City, where then I can share them in like these major institutions. I remember one of my favorite moments was when I was at the Whitney Museum showing my piece Unfolding the Universe. That was Twin Quasar. And it was really fun to hear like the curator and the director of the Whitney Museum describing gravitational lensing to a bunch of people in the art museum. And I was like, oh my God, now all these art people are gonna know like gravitational lensing and be interested in that type of science. So it's just great because you're reaching like a completely untapped community when you collaborate with, these art institutions. That's like coming from like a space background. And I always hope to do more of that. So I'm doing, shows in galleries and in museums and trying to, take it all over the city and send the message of like space and astrophysics and get people to talk about it, get people into it. Because it's like so cool. Like art is, I feel like art and music and science and everything is it's just humans trying to figure out their place in the universe and describe their place in the universe, figure out why we're all here, and it's all the same thing to me. I don't think there needs to be these divides between art and science.
Absolutely, and art is a really incredible medium to educate people on the importance of space science. And Liz, that's something you've absolutely been doing with Teachers in Space. How do you feel like the work that you've done has helped to shift the narrative when it comes to how educators can contribute towards the broader space narrative?
Thank you, Kim, for asking that, because that is exactly what we get evaluated on. When teachers sign up to take our courses, they fill out a questionnaire about how they feel about teaching space or technology, how comfortable are they with it, do they think space is only for rich people, right? All these attitudes. And then after they've been through the program, our evaluators have them take it again, and we get these major shifts from a 4-something to a 5 often, or at least a 4.9, on a scale of how comfortable they are, how much they think they're ready to teach space, how important they think it is. So that's what we're attempting to do. And the result of that is that the teachers are excited, they get the students excited. I have had a teacher from Melbourne, Florida say, guess what, when you guys said, Teachers in Space, that we would be able to build and fly a satellite, and I went back to my 11th graders and said, who wants to build a satellite and send it to space? They said, we can do that. They were in Melbourne, right? They're on the Space Coast and they didn't know that they could do that. So teachers are really able to give students what they want. And then the students report that because they built the experiment, because they understand and can explain the data and what it means, the pictures and essays they write are getting them the interviews that they want and the acceptances they want into the colleges they want. And from those first students that we were teaching 10 years ago, that class with Melbourne, all 17 of those 11th graders went on to pursue STEM studies at university, and 4 of them went on to medical school. So they don't necessarily go to the space industry, but we are achieving what we're after, which is getting them caring about technology and engineering, and that benefits everybody.
That's great. I think it's so wonderful that the work that you're doing is shifting the narrative and helping to expand the pipeline so that we can get more incredible young leaders like Gitika working in the field. And I think, Khaki, the work that you've been doing, you've really exemplified over years that it is possible to build a sustainable career in the space sector. You've done it with larger companies, and now you have your own venture that you're launching. Could you share a bit more about that and why you feel like you felt compelled to, why you felt comfortable launching a new endeavor that's technical in a city like New York? I think many people shy away from the idea of launching a space company in the city for a multitude of reasons, but you are diving right on in and you're doing it with a wealth of experience.
There we go, the push button. Yeah, well, where to start on that one too, Kim. Yeah, I don't even know if I properly introduced myself. Like, that I said I'm Khaki Rodway, and I'm CEO of Ethereum Space Corporation, and I've been in this industry, this new space industry, for 20 years, 20 plus. But anyway, we'll go on to Kim's question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the connections. You know, it's comfortable in starting something by having a network. I mean, first of all, the network here in New York is extraordinary. It's surprising how many people I know, people who are here in New York, that I meet at conferences all around the country and not New York. I mean, Chris over there is sitting there. It's like, Chris, I mean, how many times have we met that we're not in New York? It's more often outside of here than not. So it is kind of amazing to be able to pull in all the different people that are here. Liz is the same way. I mean, I think the first time I met you, we were in Mojave. So everything seems to come back to New York. And as far as being comfortable in starting a company here, yeah, I mean, I honestly, I don't know if I can answer that other than to say, you know, look, I've been here a long time. I've seen companies rise and fall, and I know what makes a good company from the business perspective, because a lot of times the technology may not match the market, and I've seen a lot of companies start with the technology and not have a market, not have a business model to follow other than to say, build it and they will come. And maybe it's just the New York sense ability that I have, the New York way of living. I mean, we have to understand how to navigate humans every day just walking down the sidewalk, and humans are going to be either on the sidewalk or on a bike or in a car. So our perspective has to be extremely wide. And maybe that's what I'm taking into my company and taking into this business of being a deep tech company in space. That from the heart, that's the best answer I can give you.
I deeply resonate with that. I think that's one of the most beautiful parts about living in New York and working in New York is that unlike other space hubs, this city is absolutely not an echo chamber. Every time I go to a general networking event, I feel like I'm the only space person in the room. I'm sure many of us can resonate with that. This might be one of the few times where we're like, wait a second, we all do this? What? I remember when I first moved to New York, I did not come here because I did not want to live in New York. I came here because of my first space job. And I remember, kind of like what you were saying, with the invaluable part of the connective aspect of the city. I started at a new startup, and I was attending a conference, and my emails were going unanswered when I would email the head of a NUSA to try and get a meeting with her before this event and try and work with her team. And she happened to be coming to the city, and I was able to sit down with her and her team, and I ended up getting to speak at the UN the next year. And if I was in another city, it would have been so hard to make a connection like that and to get a direct impact like that so quickly. People are constantly coming into the city with the intention to connect, to drive impact for their respective businesses and organizations. And that's something we all have the benefit of leveraging, and that all of you guys have leveraged to support your careers. So many people don't think about that as intuitively when they think about New York being a potential future space hub. I kind of think it already is. But I'd love to know what you guys think we could do to improve the narrative around New York and its place in the space sector. How can we get those folks in the more standard space hubs in Colorado and DC and Florida? How can we get them to understand that our city does offer so much and we should be working more intentionally together to grow the space economy? Liz?
Good job, Kim. That's been very much on my mind, and you just gave me an idea. So I've been involved in an effort that NASA started about 2 months ago to develop workforce hubs. And the idea was you could apply for funding to improve your hub if you had a community college with a tech track, if you had a high school with a tech track, if you had 3 employers aligned to NASA's priorities, a NASA center, and a workforce development organization in your state. And I started looking for that here in New York, and I talked to Empire Space because I figured if anybody knew, they would. And what we found was a lot of folks who were really excited to be working with Cornell and with Columbia, but not with any community colleges. Meanwhile, I have a board member, Jim Adams, is recently retired from being Deputy Chief Technologist at NASA. He's in Maryland, which is where I grew up. So I also called him and said, surely this exists in Maryland. I could think of some Anne Arundel Community College, right? There's a good vocational school in Baltimore. Clearly there are employers. And we got a little further there, but even there we found that the hub doesn't quite exist yet. So last week I was in Colorado at the Space Symposium, and a woman from NASA was there talking about this workforce thing. And I asked her, and she said, well, no, we know that. There's probably 3 states that have it, and they'll lead the way, and the others will follow. And I'm thinking, if we don't help New York figure it out, right? We've already dropped down to the 3rd state, GDP-wise. Texas is now ahead of us, right? And of course California is, but they're big, but Florida is coming up behind us. So what do? Well, while I was researching this, somebody put me in touch with the community college all the way up in Jamestown, almost to Cleveland. And they called me. A professor there is also involved with the Small Business Development Corporation. He said, where are you? I said, I'm in Brooklyn. He said, well, if you were in Manhattan, you could work with me. And I said, I have a business address in Manhattan. He said, use that and request me. And he just took me on. And now I have small business development support, and I'm going to grow my business. And I said, how do we know if you succeed. And he said, I'm looking to add jobs and increase revenue. I said, so am I. So now we meet every Monday. This is what we need, right? We need to build this because the people that I knew, like you said, before the pandemic, who had started businesses here, Honeybee Robotics, Final Frontier Design, the spacesuit company, you name it, and my best friend, they got acquired, and they are now in Houston or they're in Florida, because that's where you go. You can get funded here, but you can't grow. We gotta fix that.
Something I just want to add on, that's a really great point, is I think we need to lean into our advantage and not try to become necessarily like, oh, we're going to manufacture rockets here, because we don't, not, right, exactly. But we need to lean into how we do have so many VCs here. The last group was talking about how there's so much capital flowing here who they want to invest in startups. We could, be kind of like the accelerator of space startups. Like if you want to build a space startup, you come to New York. Like building that messaging and leaning into what we have, I think is important. And we could have that really big conference that happens in New York City. We have these accelerators, these incubators for space startups, and here are the VCs that are based here that will fund you, and here are groups you can join. So I think leaning into that and leaning into what we have and not worrying about how we don't have space is really important. And I think that's I just wanted to add on to Liz because I think I was going to say the same thing.
I can add a little bit too. For me in the art industry, I run into a lot of very wealthy collectors, and they all own lots of companies here and lots of big businesses. And I sometimes am the first time they're hearing about the space industry, and I'm explaining these missions and how they're underfunded and these projects need money behind them. And it's a great way to tap into that network and that economy.
One thing that I've seen is in the private sector, there's so many cool private companies. Before it was like, each nation was doing their own mission, but now, like one of our clients is iSpace, and they started out in Japan and then opened up an office in Colorado and Luxembourg and now Saudi Arabia, and so there's all this international cooperation going on. But it's very tricky in terms of like all the national security, and, how do you share info across countries, but then there's already so many different interests in terms of like where do you open up an office and so forth. But I think New York is uniquely positioned to almost solve kind of the legal side of things in terms of like, international cooperation. The UN is here, the city's so international, a lot of Europe's coming through New York to enter the US space market. And so, even on our side, we're trying to figure out like we came to New York to be closer to Europe too, as we have more European clients. But there's still that problem of like how is data and information shared across the world? And so I think that's something that, the talent pool here could really focus on and then help, that all the incubation going on here and all the progress.
Thank you all for sharing that. I think that New York is getting to a place where we can have these broader conversations because we're doing such a great example at showcasing what it looks like when you leverage diverse talent in a dynamic way. I know last year we had this panel, a lot of you guys were on here, and we were talking a lot about adding more women to the workforce. And when you go to other space hubs, the DCs, the Colorados, the big space events, the conversation on diversity is something that's very prominent because it seems to be a bit more of a challenge in other places. But here in New York, I find that whenever I've come to a space event, it's never been as big of an issue. It's not as big of a conversation. We so authentically and organically are able to bring in people from all backgrounds and with different perspectives. And we all know that different perspectives tend to lead to increased impact. And so how do you feel like the diversity of New York can be better spotlighted and leveraged in order to showcase, again, how New York can be an example to other space cities?
I guess I got the mic. And that was something that we talked about downstairs. So, I think we need to be out front with this. I think we need to lead and to show the rest of the country who we are and and what we're about. Just simple thing like let's take a group photo at the end of this You know, how many times have I been to conferences where we've taken a group photo? I mean, 200 people standing there, and fine, you post it and you put it out there. This is New York, people. And that's what we need to say, and that's what we need to go out with. But I mean, I think, you know, New York Times today has a really good video of people talking about the opinion section of talking about DEI and is it good, is it bad. The point of diversity is giving people the opportunity, right? That at its core is what it means to be diverse and inclusive, and everybody here on this panel is doing that. So it's all about getting out there, the community colleges, to the art world, to the medical world, to, I mean, so many things that I didn't even know until yesterday that while Cornell stores private astronauts' fluid samples, all right, who knew, right? You'd think, okay, it's down in Houston or it's in California. No, it's here. So I think maybe you can help with this, Chandler. You guys imagine Milk is just telling the world what we have here, what's behind us on this ship, even, and going out. Kim's good at this. Going out and talking to students and opening students' eyes who have no idea that they could build satellites, that they could code, that they could build systems that can go up into space. And you know, that's where our strength lies, because we have those opportunities here, and they're right at our fingertips. And whether they're certainly here in New York City, but across the state as well. So yeah, I think it behooves us all to get out there and to tell people what we're doing, and to tell as many people what we're doing. You know, even go to your local school and say, you know, hey, I work in space, this is what I do with it what you want.
I could not agree more. I feel like I've been trying my best over the years to get the message out into new spaces, to get new actors excited about working in the space sector. And even just next week is, I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but Moonfest is happening at the Brookfield Cemetery. And I had never heard about it. It is sold out. There's a wait list. I'm speaking there, but I'm very excited. But it's crazy that there is so much tangible excitement here, and I don't think all of us in the room are using it to our best abilities, at least not yet. And so I think that's a really great point to bring up, is how do we bring in new actors? And before I open up the floor to the audience, I'd love if you guys could share what you feel like would help accelerate your work. Is there a type of partnership that you feel like would help take the work that you're doing, the education work, the business work, the media work, your art work, to the next level? What do you feel like we could all, the kind of partnerships that we could work together to find that would help you take your work to the next level?
I want to send teachers to space. I need advertisers. I need donors. I need corporate sponsors. But let me tell you, we have been running our program since 2011 is the first year that we were running teacher training programs, and it was mostly in Mojave or in Florida and Oklahoma, New Mexico, Kansas, Maine. When we finally got to do the full program in New York last year, up in Gloversville. This year we're in the city. This year we're a block off Union Square. But last year we got to Gloversville. 3 teachers from New Mexico came and everybody else was New York. 14 of them drove up from the city. And I asked what I always ask on day one. Who here has worked with Arduino before? Every hand went up. That's New York teachers. Now, normally we spend the first 2 days building a 1U CubeSat, which you can see downstairs on our display and also when we do our breakout. And we give them 2 days to get through getting everything working on their laptop. We give them laptops if they need one, learning how to solder, circuitry, coding. These teachers all had it built at the end of day one. That's New York teachers. So I forget what the question was, but I wanted to share this. Oh, what do I need? Yeah, support for these teachers. I'll tell you another real sad story, and you can look this up. So I'll only tell the stuff that's public, because there's some NDAs after that. But the public stuff you will find is that about 3 years ago, somebody donated a pair of tickets to space to a foundation. Even though this is public, I'm gonna just, you can go get all the details. And the foundation sold them, as they should, at their auction for $8 million. Good for them. And they gave that money to support their mission, which is to fight hunger in New York City. But the donor said, I want these tickets to go to New York City school teachers. And I read about this, it was on the news, and you know me, first I'm angry, and then I'm like, how do I get that? And sure enough, a year later, a law firm contacted me over LinkedIn and said, we may have somebody who wants to send a teacher to space. And I thought, I know who this is, and I started Googling, there was no further word on it. So we started talking. The law firm had been hired to find out if we were the right nonprofit to handle this and if it could be done. And eventually we got all our NDAs with the launch company and the law firm and the foundation. And so after that, you won't find anything more in the news. But I can tell you that what happened was for 3 years, the foundation struggled with the city to get permission to invite the teachers to apply. And at the end of 3 years, I'm always fed up. I don't want to wait. You're offering me something, I want to take it before it's gone. 3 years go by. This January, I get a call from the foundation. We're just going to go ahead. We'll do it with the charter schools that we support. I was like, okay. You know, it's not big, but at least teachers will go to space. 2 days later, New Shepard stopped flying, and so you will see if you look in the news that that's who the tickets were from. So it's gone. We didn't get to do it. So what do I need? I want my New York City teachers to go to space.
I think you should send artists to space too.
Yes, yeah, because Frank White's going to go. They're raising money for him, and I love it. I love the way they're raising money to send Frank White, the author that you mentioned. He's going to take a chatbot with him to see if the chatbot can, why don't we take teachers to see what they can experience, because they're the ones, and an artist who can really share. Yeah.
I mean, that was like a selfish plug, but
Yeah.
we
all got to do that.
We all got to do it. But yeah, what I'm looking for everybody in this room is I find the space industry endlessly inspirational, and I can't make my art without you guys. So if you're doing something cool, come find me. Come find me after and tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're excited about, and I'd love to collaborate and make art with you guys.
So I mentioned that I, have United Thinkers, which is a nonprofit. We, spread space education to all students, K through 12, and we've done a lot of events not only here in the U.S. but abroad. So I think if you're an educator, if you're a company who's looking to work with a nonprofit who's making change both here nationally as well as internationally, we've done these 3-day space conferences in Tanzania, Kenya, North Macedonia, and India. And the reasoning actually comes from New York, which I didn't mention the story earlier, but there's a lady, her name's Jessica Mashama. I met her at a New York City event. She is not connected to space. She works with the United Nations, and I was talking about my space education work. And at this point, I've done no international events, but it's always been something I've wanted to do to reach a wider audience. And she's like, why don't you come to Tanzania, which is where she's from, and we put on an event together. And that's where we both kind of fundraised money, and we did an event there, and it's sparked a whole lot of work. So if you're an educator who wants to do an event in your classroom, we'd love to partner with you. Or if you're a company who's looking to donate, we always are looking to pitch ourselves. So we would love to connect with you all.
So we need New York money. Plain and simple. But what I'd like to see, so what we're building is essentially it's a brain, software, hardware that connects drones and spacecraft vehicles to systems, to all of the systems that go into making that vehicle, that platform. It has use in defense. It has use commercial. spacecraft, things that are going to Moon, Mars, planetary. Basically, it's a system that hardware-enforced autonomy for operations in extreme environments where people can't be. So where you may have a latency between your software system, but also, you don't have a person there to turn a wrench. So this is what we're building. Besides the money, what I would like to see coming out of New York is more that comes out of the policy side. So I would like to see New York City, I'd like to see the mayor's office promote space, promote what we have here, promote all of us in the room and what we're doing. I'd like to see the legislative body in Albany, do the same and start. We had a great conversation yesterday about this and what we could do, because New York, we've got, I don't want to call it soft skills, but the software side of things, the digital side of things, Silicon Valley's got nothing on us. So that, I'd also like to see our representatives down in Washington get involved, because part of the reason why people know that Maryland's a big space state, or Florida's a big space state, Texas, Alabama, is because of their senators. Shelby put more money into Alabama on the space side than anybody in God's green earth. So, we have things here. We had the GIS, I say that in the past tense. It's still there. Goddard up at Columbia on the climate science side. But AFRL in Rome, Air Force Research Lab, that's the information directorate. Again, the soft side, the digital side of things. Let's build those up. Or at least start putting that government money, or at least government emphasis. Start with the emphasis part of it, really, and go from there. And I don't know if anybody in this room recently heard an interview that Jamie Dimon did, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, right? But he's talking about how New York City, New York State is losing businesses to Texas, to the southern states, because of the regulatory, the taxes are high. There's no incentive for businesses to be here. So start with something like that. Get back to those things that he's saying, because everybody's courting the businesses here, right? It's kind of a reason why you start here and then grow out of New York City. Some of the companies that you all have mentioned, but just be more embracing, I think, of what we're doing, and not to be negative, but I'm just saying, again, where's Evan or Patrick? Look, hey, let's start, and I'm happy to dive into this, but let's start that legislative, that policy arm of Empire Space. Because we can do it. We can, like I said, I've got a house upstate, it's about 50 minutes from Albany. I've got no problem going to the governor's office and saying, hey, look, man, there's all this space going on here. Let's get into it.
My last few thoughts. If you guys are working on anything cool and need a marketing partner, please do reach out. Marketing is usually a last-minute thought for most of the companies we work with. And to be fair, you need to usually build something before you sell it. That being said, we've seen, the amount of capital we're able to raise for our clients through the marketing that we do has been super invaluable. And I think being a part of the community, we do a lot more than just marketing. You know, we're also a big part of like building out the community here in New York. We have an event Thursday. We hosted happy hour last night. And so part of it is, you know, we're looking for other partnerships for, you know, talked to Ayushi the other day, you know, maybe doing stuff at the planetarium. But if you're in any way involved in the community in New York, have a space, have any funding, and want to do something cool, we're plugged in with a whole bunch of different creatives. So we're always looking for new creative ways to bring space more accessible to the general masses. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. We have time for one quick question. Does anyone have one question they want to ask our panel? Yes.
Thank you for the valuable information. It was wonderful. My question is, since we have such a diverse set of panelists, how do we train students for the upcoming space age, or like for the upcoming space workforce? What do you guys think is the way to get students excited for space?
The question was, how do we train students for the upcoming, for different workforce opportunities in the space sector, and how do we get them excited?
Okay, so those two things definitely go hand in hand. So you need to get them excited, and you need to have a way to train them. And it turns out the Department of Defense has been really focused on this for the past couple of years. They got a lot of money for it because they